Welcome into the Barbecue Life podcast powered by Hound Hogs BBQ Supply. Check them out on Facebook and Instagram at Hound Hogs BBQ Supply or on the web, houndhogsbbqsupply.com. So I want to welcome in Mr. Jake Fincher to the show. He is with Finchers Barbecue and Catering. They're based out of Macon, Georgia. And I do have to give a quick shout out to Josh DeBose over at Mrs. Griffin's Barbecue Sauce for connecting us. So Jake, welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, glad to be here. Miss Griffin's does a lot of business. We do business with them and they do business with us. So good family friends.
I love it. I love it. Well, let's talk about Finchers because you guys have quite a history, very similar to Mrs. Griffin's barbecue sauce. And I believe Finchers Barbecue actually started in 1935. Is that right?
Yep, that is correct. My grandfather, his name is Douglas Fincher, but everybody called him Dude Fincher. He was the dude before the dude was cool, so but that was his name, was Dude Fincher. He started it in 1935.
So tell us about your journey. I mean, does this go all the way back to your childhood? Were you,
Oh yeah.
out there helping your grandfather from an early age?
Yeah, we started. My brother and I are in business together. My brother Doug and I are in business together now, and we would start probably around 4 or 5 years old. We used to have curb service, and where guys would come out to the car and wait on you. And our first job would be to clean off the curb trays, to take the salt, the pepper, the empty plates, and clean the curb trays off. And that's how we got started in the business. So I've been here. I'm 48 now, so I've been here a long time.
That is super cool. And so when people think of Finchers, I know you have multiple locations. Are they all located in the Macon area or are they outside the
Middle
Macon
Georgia.
area?
We have 3 in Macon and 1 in Warner Robins, Georgia, which is right outside of Macon.
So what is Finchers known for? I mean, what are you guys known for in the Macon community when it comes to barbecue? Is there one specific thing or
Our claim to fame is pulled pork, real slow cooked pulled pork. That's our go-to. That's what if you ask anybody about us, that's what they'll tell you first is the pulled pork. And we do everything else too: ribs, chickens, brisket, all that stuff. But our go-to is pulled pork.
So you talked about, tell us about your processor as much as you can. Are you cooking it on an offset stick burner? I mean, how are you cooking the pulled pork and everything else?
We have 2 different ways we do. We have one, the old original pit, which is it's an open pit, straight charcoal, and it cooks about 20 hours. We don't use that as often anymore because it's the cost of it and the labor intensity. It's hard. We use that when we have some big orders, and if something happens to our other pits, it's there. It's never going to break. It's been here since day one, and it's it's always there. But we use we have old hickory rotisseries, and we use charcoal wood mixture. Cooks about 14 to 16 hours on there. We cook hams and shoulders, and we mix that. So
pulled pork is Fincher's claim to fame. I know you mentioned early in the show, or maybe before we started recording, that you guys work very closely with Mrs. Griffin's. Tell us about that partnership. How did that come to be, and how do you guys help one another?
We were looking for somebody to bottle our sauce. My grandfather always said, anybody can cook a piece of meat. It's the sauce that makes you different. It's the one that singles you out. And we were looking for somebody to be able to bottle our sauce where we could ship it and put it in stores and those kind of things. So, Miss Griffin's has been here also since 1935, and they've been, bottling sauce, and it's in a bunch of stores all over the South. And so we work with them, and that's what they do for us. We make our own sauce for the restaurant, like what goes on the barbecue here, but the bottles Miss Griffin's does for us.
Now tell us about your sauce. Obviously, Mrs. Griffin's has their unique spin on the sauce. I mean, what makes your sauce unique? Going back to what you mentioned, the comment by your grandfather and I would agree that sauce definitely sets you apart. But what kind of style of sauce do you guys work with at the restaurant?
I saw an article. I can't remember where it was. Saw it about a year ago. It's called Georgian barbecue. You hear of South Carolina barbecue and North Carolina barbecue and Texas and all those, but you never hear Georgia barbecue per se. But I would say if you look at the state, it's very similar, and it's a combination of the vinegar, mustard, Worcestershire, uh, ketchup base. It's not sweet, but it's not straight vinegar. It's a brownish color where it's not that red color or the yellow color, but it's the equal parts of all those ones. It's vinegar, mustard, Worcestershire, ketchup, all equal parts. And so it's pretty, it's different than the ones that a lot of people are familiar with, the sweet sauces, I say. So
That's right. There's a lot of, of course, as you know, there's a lot of options out there when it comes to
yeah,
sauces, and I definitely agree with what you said about, there certainly is. When people talk about Texas style barbecue, you typically think of beef. When you talk about Kansas City barbecue or Midwest, you typically think of ribs, with and a lot of sweet. I'm from the Midwest. I don't particularly like a lot of sweet, but that's how they like their ribs. Memphis is similar in that respect as well. But
right.
you're right about Georgia. When you, I'm curious on your take on this. When you think about Georgia barbecue, if you're talking to somebody that's from, you know, New Mexico, let's say, um, how do you describe Georgia barbecue? What gives Georgia barbecue its unique characteristics?
Well, for one, it's going to be pork.
Yeah,
It's going to be pulled shoulders, or hams. Now everybody's using butts because it's easier, but it's not a sweet barbecue, is what I would say. It's not. You're not going to get that a lot of sugar and a lot of ketchup in it. It's going to be like I said, it's going to look brownish.
sure.
It's that reddish brown color, and it kind of. I think it starts from one side of the state and it goes and the colors change. It's like from Alabama, the line of Alabama, Georgia to South Carolina. The texture and the color is gonna change. It's gonna go from reddish all the way over to the yellowish when you
Sure.
get to the South Carolina. So you know it's, it's just different than what most people are used to, and it's starting to get its Georgia's starting to get its due when it comes to barbecue. It's taken a long time, but with Southern Soul down in St. Simons and some of the guys in Atlanta who are very big in social media and pushing their barbecue and competitions and stuff, and Myron Mixon down and good friend of mine, competition cooker. Georgia's starting to get its due with barbecue finally. So
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's slowly but surely, putting itself on the map, so to speak, of on the
yeah,
national barbecue scene. But I do think it's interesting because there is such a mix, right? Such a melting pot in the North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia. You kind of have, and I love the analogy you use. As you move, kind of across the state, the colors change, right? Literally.
yep,
And then you get into South Carolina. I'm located in the Augusta area, actually right across the river in South Carolina. You kind of get a mix. You get that deep red sweet sauce. You get the vinegar base. You get the mustard base.
yep,
And I'm not so sure that if somebody asked me, hey, what describe South Carolina barbecue, I don't know that I would have a good, explanation other than it's probably going to be pork, and
right.
you're probably going to either have mustard or vinegar on it. But I don't feel like South Carolina has the uniqueness, and maybe I'm wrong here. I don't feel like it has the uniqueness like a Georgia does, a Texas, a Kansas City. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, do you kind of feel the same way
You know,
there? Or
I felt that way about Georgia for a while. That
yeah,
Georgia didn't have the uniqueness, and I think Myron Mixon has helped push that the Georgia barbecue narrative a lot with his competitions, and then what is it, Williams Brothers? I think up in Atlanta, that's gotten to be real big. So
yep, Williamson Brothers, yes,
Williamson Brothers, yeah, and so they've helped push the Georgia name, drastically. But I would agree, it's kind of similar to South Carolina that there's not. I mean, there wasn't a a standalone sauce per
Right.
se. But the pork is the one that stands alone in Georgia.
That's
A
right.
lot of people are doing brisket and everything, but it's still a pork state when it comes to barbecue.
Why do you think that is? Is that because I've wondered that because I'm a big beef guy. Like when we cook, our specialty is brisket and beef short ribs. That's what we do.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, I know cost is a factor, from a
Yeah.
business standpoint. It's no secret beef short ribs are a heck of a lot more than pork shoulder
Right.
or pork
I could
butts.
I could tell you what my grandfather. This is what he told. I always asked why we didn't do beef barbecue, and he says, "Well, you put gravy on beef and you put barbecue sauce on pork." And he would never call anything beef barbecue. He said that
Interesting.
barbecue is a noun, not a verb. It's a pulled pork, sandwich. That's what barbecue is. Um, and that was his. He taught me everything. My father, and so I did add brisket to the menu. I had to. There's too much demand for it, but I don't focus on that as much. We believe in that old KISS analogy: keep it simple, stupid. And
Right.
do what you do best, and you'll be okay. And that's what we do. That's what we do best is our pulled pork.
So how do you guys stand out? So you've clearly, you've been in business for generations, right? We're talking about almost 90 years almost in business, we're approaching. So obviously a couple years ago, with COVID and the chaos pandemonium that created really across the world.
Yeah.
What would you say, or how did you guys weather that storm when, we saw what 60-70% of the restaurants closing down?
Yeah. I'm a firm believer, especially a barbecue restaurant. The customers want to see the guy cooking the barbecue. They want to know the person who does the cooking. And when it comes to work, my brother and I believe in being at the restaurants. And I really think that's gone a long way. We're always here.
Yeah.
When the customer comes in, we're going to be. They know who's cooking it. It's going to be the same every day, and they're gonna, you know, we're going to talk to them. They're going to know the owner. It's about customer relationships. And during COVID, we didn't. I don't want to get in trouble here, but we didn't follow the guidelines all that well. We're a barbecue restaurant owner. We don't like people telling us what to do. We kept working. We if they wanted to come and shut us down, they were going to have to do it. We had bills to pay, and our workers had to work, and we just kept on doing what we do. Now we did the social distancing, and we closed down the dining room for a while, but we thought outside the box. We brought curb service back during that time.
Yep.
Where we had our waitresses who were inside, they started waiting outside and started waiting on people at the cars. And we were lucky in a sense that we were set up for that because we used to do it years ago and we knew how to do it. And so I think hard work,
Yeah.
work hard, save your money. That's what we've always been taught. And the other thing that I want to put out there that really sets us apart, our barbecue is the only barbecue in the history of the world, I think, that has been on the space shuttle twice. Is
Twice.
Twice. It was eaten by astronauts in 1989, up on the space shuttle in November of 1989, and then the astronaut who he was from Macon area, he's the one who got it up there. He passed away in '91, and they took it up in his honor and ate it again. So that's one of the claim to fames of my family's restaurant is first in space, best in taste.
I love that. First and second in space, right? Number one and
That's
number
right.
two.
So,
Now, how did that? So you touched on it a little bit. The astronaut was from the Macon area, but I'm curious. How did you guys go from barbecue on Earth to barbecue in space? How did that play out?
yeah, my dad went to high school with an astronaut named Sonny Carter, and they were at a high school reunion, and Sonny was about to. It was probably I think a year before he was going up. He'd been training for it, and Dad jokingly said, "You ought to take barbecue up and eat it." And well, about 2 months later, I think my mom got a phone call from NASA asking us to ship it out to Houston so they could. It was either Houston or Birmingham. I think it was Houston, so they could test it. They had to do all the tests on it and everything. And at first they thought that it was a joke, that Sonny was playing a joke on them. And then they called back and asked him where it was, and then they freeze dried it, sent it out. Froze it, put it on dry ice, and sent it out there. And they did all the tests and found out it was good to go. And they took it up after that.
How about that? So first and second in space, that's a first on our show, and probably, well, it sounds like it's a first like internationally as well.
As
Um,
far as I know, it's never been done again, and it wasn't. I know it was before, but I don't. As far as I know, nobody else has sent it up since then. So I don't know.
so you talked about your sauces earlier. One thing I wanted to ask for our listeners: where can folks buy Fincher's barbecue sauces?
At the moment, it's still we just ship it out. At the moment, we just
Factory
they could
direct.
yeah, they could call us and will ship it to you. We do that all over the world. We got customers that will want it, and we used to ship the actual food, and then COVID changed the shipping. Where they wouldn't guarantee anything getting there next day, and
Yep.
or second day, so we stopped shipping out actual food. So we just ship sauce.
Now, have you ventured into your own rubs as well?
I make my own rub. I have not put that where I sell it to the public yet. No, we do make our own rub. I made a TikTok that had the recipe of the rub. I'm starting to try to do the social media.
There you go.
My daughters hate it because they see their dad on there making a fool out of himself. But that's the way you got to market yourself these days. It's actually paying off. It's paying off. So
I was going to say, TikTok is a great place to get some organic growth, much better than, the other platforms because they are so crowded right
yeah,
now. But you're right. TikTok is, I think, more entertainment than anything. And, what better way than to make fun of yourself? At the end of the day, if you can't laugh at yourself, then
exactly.
you probably take yourself a little too seriously. But you did bring up a good
Exactly.
point, and that's something I wanted to camp out on, and that is social media. I see this not just from restaurants, but also competition teams specifically, and that is the lack of effort, I'm going to say, when it comes to social media. So I know in this day and age, you're a company that is almost 90 years old. So, clearly, or obviously there was no social media back in 1935. So you guys built the name, built the business on just customer service and great, awesome
Right.
food. Tell me this: why is it such a challenge for restaurant owners, specifically barbecue restaurant owners and barbecue teams, to embrace that social media thing? I'm just curious what your opinion is on that.
I probably have a couple of ideas, thoughts on that. I have started to do it a good bit. I think it's you can't get complacent in this industry. If you do, somebody's going to come past you or put you out of business, especially the way it is right now. But I think a lot of barbecue people are very conservative. Um, they don't trust the internet or the social media, I think. And I, you look at who's doing it, it's, middle age or up, on the competition, middle age or up
Yep.
guys that they don't, they don't know how to do it, and they're scared of it, I think. And it's a resource out there that it's free. If you could, I could reach in one day, I know by doing say a Facebook post, you could go and set it where you boost your post and you could reach 10,000 people in a day, free of charge. Well, if you want to, you could pay $10 or something like that,
Right.
in a day, and reach 10,000 people right there at their phone or right there at the computer. Why in the hell wouldn't you do it? I don't understand why people don't do it, except for the fact I think they're scared of it
Yeah.
and they don't trust it. You know, I think it's the demographics, and I think it's the age, and I think it's the beliefs, especially the way things are nowadays. You hear all these theories that everything's a lie, so they don't like social media. So
It's a good point. I hadn't really considered, the kind of the generational gap there, but you're exactly right. There's not a whole lot of, 20 somethings that are on the competition trail. And there's probably not a whole lot of 20 something year olds that are, opening up barbecue restaurants either.
right.
Um,
That's exactly right. And the ones that do are usually pretty successful. I mean, you
right.
look at the guys down there, like I said, Southern Soul, they were young. And I mean, they've done really well. And, so usually the ones that I think Williamson brothers were pretty young guys too. So I think, so
They
yeah.
were, they were, and also, I think I saw an article where they, are in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium now too, which I know is a big
Yeah.
deal for them. Now I'm curious though, just from a restaurant and entrepreneur standpoint, right? So I'm an entrepreneur just like yourself. I love it. Not a restaurant owner though, and that's a big difference, right? So
Yeah.
we have listeners that are on that, that routinely tune in that, have their own food truck with, dreams, goals to have a restaurant. And we have folks that, are considering possibly just going brick and mortar right out of the gate. What I'm curious from your perspective is really more around just some words of wisdom, right? For those that are looking to transition from a mobile food business to a brick and mortar, or maybe those that are just looking to go straight brick and mortar. I mean, what words of wisdom might you have for those folks?
Real quick, I'd tell them to think long and hard about it and do some research because it's not as easy as it looks. The ones that run the food truck, if they're successful in that food truck, I'd be real hesitant to go into brick and mortar. I would keep doing what you're doing. I'm interested in actually getting a food truck and expanding that way instead of expanding by brick and mortar because you can reach so many more people in different areas with a food truck. But if you're really intent on opening a restaurant, you're gonna have to be there. You're gonna be, I mean, don't think you're not gonna work 16, 20-hour days, especially early on. The customer wants to see you. They want to see the person there, especially in the barbecue industry. Barbecue's unique compared to, any like a fast food or a steak or anything like that. They know you got people back there cooking it, but the barbecue, it takes, you can't cook it in, 30 minutes. It takes
Right.
14 to 16 hours, and they want to know who's the guy that's doing that or who's the woman that's doing that. And so, like I said, be ready to work, be ready to put your family uh, second at sometimes because uh, it happens. My wife always tells me, that she's always second or third, and it's not true, but she feels that way sometimes because a restaurant takes it out of you. That you're always on call, um, and you got to do it because there's always somebody behind you wanting to take over from you, and so
Right.
you got to keep going. So, but I would be very careful these days right now. So,
Yep. That's a great, you make a great point, and that is, uh, it's a hard truth to accept, but that is that you're going to have to sacrifice some very important things if that's what you want to do, and some of that may be your family time.
yeah,
Um,
when during 2000, when the economy tanked, what
7,
2010, 11,
2008.
yeah, through that whole time, we got hit hard, and we made some bad financial decisions and struggled. And I mean, I think I worked over 2 years straight without a day off. Just me, my brother, I mean, and my family, we worked every day, not taking days off, not taking vacations, just to keep it afloat. And I mean, that paid off because we're doing very well now. But you know, that paid off. You got to be willing to do that if you want to make it. I see, what is it? The number one business opened every year is restaurant. The number one business closed every year is restaurant. And I think it's up in the mid 90% of restaurants fail in the first year.
Yeah.
And so it's just, if you got to be unique and you got to be willing to work hard.
I
So
love that. Yeah, that's you hit the nail right on the head. How can our listeners connect with you guys? What are your various social media handles so folks can connect with you?
Finchers Barbecue, Finchers BBQ. We're on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, and then it's just me on TikTok, Jake Fincher.
Excellent. We'll have all that in the show notes for our listeners so they can connect with you as well as your website so they can order any sauce if they'd like to. And again, for our
Yeah.
listeners, we're chatting with the owner operator of Fincher's Barbecue, Mr. Jake Fincher. He comes to us out of Macon, Georgia. If you're in the area, check out Fincher's BBQ and Catering. They've got 3 locations in Macon and 1 up in Warner Robins. Jake, thanks so much for taking the time, sir. I enjoyed it.
Sounds great. Thanks. Yeah, and y'all listen to this podcast. He's awesome.